Welcome to the Reality Revolution. It's an exciting day on the Reality Revolution. We finally get Von Galt. If you hopefully got a chance, if you look on YouTube, you'll see an interview I had with Von Galt, and I came out blown away. It was an amazing interview, and we talked about everything, parallel reality. So I wanted to have her on so we could continue our conversation. If you don't know Von Galt, I'm excited for you. She's an author who has studied Buddhism for the past 4 decades and counting. She grew up studying metaphysics, consciousness, Eastern energy medicine, Buddhist art history. In Buddhist Mandalas, she wrote a book called Buddhist Mandalas, Explore Reality, Parallel Realities with Sacred Geometry, where she discusses parallel realities and sacred geometry and what sacred geometries mean. And then you also wrote a book called Buddhist Guide to Manifest Parallel Realities. So we have an expert that synthesizes 3 really fascinating subjects: Buddhism, parallel realities, and sacred geometry, something I discuss all the time on the channel. And so it's going to be interesting to explore this further, to talk about these topics that I'm so fascinated in. So welcome to the Reality Revolution, Vaughn. Great to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I love these topics. I love talking about
Oh yeah.
metaphysics and consciousness. And this is my favorite topics. I never get bored. So,
Well, we'll start off. Both of the books have one underlying theme, and that is parallel realities. You're exploring a lot of metaphysical concepts, Buddhism and sacred geometry, but interlocking with it is this concept of parallel realities. Anybody that's watched my channel knows that's one of my favorite concepts. So talk to me more how that became your focus and attention when you started writing these books.
yeah. So basically, I didn't really intend to kind of get into this space. I kind of got thrown into this space.
Hmm.
Um, through all of the research and the fascinating stuff that I was kind of following. But
Hmm.
basically, in short, how I got into it is I was born and raised in the Buddhist tradition. I'm Laos, and
Hmm.
like many normal Southeast Asian children, they get born into Buddhism and they go to the temples or the vats and they learn metaphysics. And unlike many of the other children, and the people who attend, a lot of the Dharma teachings are just basics, and they're not very different from many of the other churches that I've come across in different faith systems, where they basically just teach you how not to be a douchebag to people. So you create, yeah, so that you
Right.
create like negative karma or unbalanced issues to spend the rest of your life resolving, and
Right.
hopefully not the next lifetimes trying to resolve and fix. And that's basically what was taught in the temples that I attended growing up and what I've seen. And so very, very early on, I got that lesson. And so what I typically would do is I would branch off and I would start fumbling through and studying the artwork and the murals at the different temples. I would go through some of their library of books that most people never crack open. I'm
Right.
telling you, most people at the churches they go to or the temples they go to hardly ever crack open any of those free books in the libraries.
Right.
Years to just sit there and grow dust. Well, I was one of the ones that decided to branch off and crack those books open and study and kind of learn. I call it advanced Buddhism.
Hmm.
And to kill time, I typically would talk to the monks and ask them, well, what does this mean? And a lot of the artwork has a master teacher like Kuan Yin, for example, and they always
Hmm.
have these 2 halos. And I would typically ask him, what does this mean, and what does this mean, and why do they have multiple heads? Why do they have multiple arms? What does the little lines mean? And so I would kind of get my own kind of art history lesson to also explain the metaphysics behind it.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, all right. So everybody is a Merkaba. Everybody is a Buddhist mandala, and they're traveling between realities in it. But we just don't know how we're doing. We're doing it unconsciously, and these master teachers are doing it consciously. And so I learned all these other things that I'm going to get to as well. So fast forward, I grew up, went to college, normal life. I have a IT job right now that
Hmm.
is enjoyable, that I do as well as writing books as my meditation. And about 20 years ago, many of the Buddhist monks and nuns started this initiative to go into academia and provide themselves as resources to kind of find out, um, is all this mindfulness, meditation, compassion, all this stuff, I mean, what does the effects that they have on the human consciousness, on our bodies, etc. And they also wanted to kind of get some clarity on some of the things that have been added to the canon
Hmm.
or into the different schools of Buddhism, and also clarify some areas that there's holes or gaps in, through science. We wanted to, because everything is science-based living, so we wanted to fact check against what we know in modern medicine and science and engineering up against the ancient documents that we have been adding one monk and none to another, adding throughout the ages. We wanted to fact check. So I recommend everybody take your whatever you're reading, your religious Bible or your holy books, and fact check it against science to see how
Hmm.
much of it actually, and then and then be open minded to how to clarify that. And that's what Buddhism did. It was an initiative to go, okay, if this is still current, what does the current um, academia have to kind of substantiate or clarify it? So that's what they did. So I've been following that research for about 20 years. And over the course of 20 years, a lot of the stuff that I was raised in, that I learned, that I grew up about, um, it started to fill in this huge picture. And after doing 20 years of research on it, I put it in book one of Buddhist Mandalas, which I'm going to shortly be publishing book two, and then book three, hopefully by the end of the summer of 2021. And that finishes off my 20-year research project, that substantiates the understanding that I grew up in, which I thought was just kind of folklore and
Right.
prophecy, you don't
Hmm.
really take it seriously.
Right.
Um, but we're living in it. And as I'm going through the research and it's further substantiating what's going on, I'm like, oh my God, it's happening right now. So
Right.
here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. Um, and this is just a Buddhist perspective. There lots of different indigenous perspectives and a lot of people in this space as well of ascension and awakening and the fifth dimension. They have their own perspective and they're all valid, they're all fine, because everybody's going to go through the rabbit hole to that experience in a little bit different way, and everybody provides valuable information because not everyone's going to create their reality in the same exact way. So I just want to preface that. Okay, so what is happening is, we did this, like in Buddhism, we joined up and we did this funny ceremony in 2012. Okay,
Right.
it's a 2012 awakening ceremony. I thought it was a folklore. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. And I didn't even think anything of it. You had the chiefs of the Polynesian Islands, chiefs of Mayans, you had Native American chiefs, you had um, chiefs of the Easter Islands, and you had Buddhists, because Buddhist is basically a monastic institution that records information. So we're
Right.
just really, really good um, scribes.
Hmm.
So, so we participated in it as well. And like many indigenous traditions, we believe the earth has a consciousness, and each and every single one of us living on her is an aspect of her. And she's one big consciousness. And so we know she's alive. And in 2012, according to the Buddhist era calendar, that year is the year 2555.
Hmm.
So if you're into numerology, 555 is a year of changes. Okay. And so we did the awakening ceremonies. All these indigenous cultures did it around 2012. And we didn't do anything significant. We just recognized the changeover of energy on Earth, because
Right.
that was when Earth had completed her precession. So every 2,920 years, she completes a precession and she
Right.
changes over into a different layer of energy, a different cycle. So we changed over from a lower energy of the third dimensional energies coming into Earth and stepped it up to the fifth dimensional energies coming to Earth. And that's all we did. It was already happening. Earth was already doing it on her own. And that was just the date that we recognized as that's when it completed. And we did the awakening ceremonies to kind of welcome Earth to her new level of consciousness. Um, well, I found that really interesting growing up in this. I was like, well, that's very interesting. How interesting. So we're in the fifth dimension. What's that like? And a lot of indigenous tribes have been saying since 2012, you're in the fifth dimension. You're in the fifth dimension. You're not in the third dimension. Now, here's the thing. Post 2012, it is choose your own reality. Okay, it's choose
Mhm.
your own reality. And so everybody has the abilities to basically create the reality that they want to experience. And when I was doing my research for my Buddhist Mandalas book, I found a lot of very interesting research that was going on throughout the years that further substantiate this ancient concept that many indigenous tribes have been talking about and waiting to do, and that we're going through right now. And basically, do you have any questions at this?
No, keep going. I'm listening. Yeah.
Okay. Just, sometimes I can really kind of go
No,
into
keep
like a
going, man.
tandem.
No, yeah.
Okay. So basically, when you look at the science, it further substantiates what's going on. So um, we know that the Earth has a natural heart song. Her heartbeat is typically 7.83 hertz. Okay.
Right.
And everybody who studies the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of Earth, knows that's her standing heartbeat. Now it changes and fluctuates
Right.
based on the ionosphere and just different things that's going on in her body. And about 20 or so years ago, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he was an astronaut,
Hmm.
he retired and he funded Noetic Sciences, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and that institute partnered up with Princeton University and HeartMath Institute. And what it did was put funding, probably from a bunch of ancient starseed souls, because they're interested in this kind of stuff. Um, but they put funding in that to find out, does the Earth have a consciousness? Is she alive? Are these ancient indigenous beliefs, what how much of it is true? Because if she's going to the fifth dimension, we want to go with her. We don't want to be left behind either. So they were following all of the stuff, and so they put like 90 or I think 70 at the time random number generators all over the world in different spots. And then they waited for a very long time. Nothing really ever happened. So they thought it was a really, really boring experiment. Well, um, all of a sudden, like when 9/11 happened in that part of the world, um, the random number generated, it spiked. And then Hurricane Katrina and all these natural events, hurricanes, tsunamis, in the specific area where it was happening, the random number generators would spike again about 4 hours before the event happened. Sometimes there will be current affairs and the generators will spike again. So it works much like how they predict earthquakes. Like, oh, there's a lot of magnetics that's going on in this part of the earth, and it's increasing. And so there's going to be some kind of earthquake or something going on in this area. And so they did this over the course of 20 years, and everyone can go and look at the science. It's all out there. The website is Noosphere, NOOSPHERE.Princeton edu. So
Okay.
newsphere.princeton.edu. You can go and look at 20 years of scientific evidence from one event after another event. And basically what it's telling us is that the earth is alive and she's responding to things that's happening in her body. At the same time, she does respond to the things that's happening to the people living on her because we are all connected to one another. We're all connected to the earth. We're all connected to one another as one complete organism, as one complete consciousness. And so, you know, sometimes if she feels connection to an event, she will kind of have a surge or a spike in her heart song and her heartbeat. So that 7.83 standing heartbeat that she typically has will go up to 10, 14, 20, whatever. At 9/11, it went to like in between 10 to 20, and they were really fascinated by that because nothing's ever happened for a long time. But then as we got into 2012, it spiked even higher. It more recently, it's gone up to 100, 120, 160. And the reason why I pull out these numbers, which you guys can all look at, is because like animals, we function much like animals. And so just like animals in the wild, when we feel some kind of natural disaster or something eventful is going to happen, we have anxiety in our bodies. Okay, we all do that. And so all the animals in nature will run up to the hills to get away from the impending disaster that's going to be coming through. And you can see this in nature when all the animals scatter up to the high hills. Something's going to go on, and you should probably follow them. Well, like animals, humanity is the same thing. We get those panic attacks, we get those anxieties. I know a lot of people are feeling that right now with current affairs and different things that's happening. And the earth is feeling that, and she is responding to that. And they've actually published off that website, they've published recent findings about the coronavirus that at different times the consciousness of humanity has affected Earth as well. So we're all connected. And basically, what's happened since 2012 is at first it was small spikes, 10, 20, 30 small spikes. And but then as we get further and further into what it is right now, then you get big spikes. You get 60, 100, 120, etc. These huge leaps. And what's happening is that Earth, she started small. So most people didn't notice the difference that she was bringing in more of this higher energy into the Earth.
Right.
Okay. So these hertzes were coming slow. And so people were just doing what they normally do, not thinking anything different. And then they get these huge jumps and these huge spikes. And now she's taking leaps and leaps and leaps and leaps. And she's going further and further into the higher dimensions. And this is how you understand it in your life, because for most people, they don't really understand this. So if you take the analogy of like a TV, when you're shopping for a TV, the cheaper TVs, the older TVs, the lower density, lower vibration TVs have lower hertzes, okay? Maybe 60 hertz or something. But if you go into a higher resolution TV, a TV that has much more pixels, much cleaner, much crisper, you're going to get into the higher hertzes, 120 or beyond, okay? And that's exactly what's happening with Earth. Is she started with kind of a low frequency, and then she's jumping into these higher resolutions. And so when you're looking at reality, because reality is a reflection of your consciousness, if you get into these higher frequencies, reality will change and be more crisp, and it'll be more fluid, and it's going to be working on the higher dimensions. Does that make sense? I'm
That makes
thinking I'm
sense.
losing you. I'm thinking
No,
I'm losing you somewhere.
no, I understand what you're saying. There's a lot to pick apart from that. And when we're talking about parallel realities, you're also talking about moving to the fifth dimension. And so dimensions and realities can be separate things. There's a lot of different aspects to what you just talked about.
Yeah.
Uh, but I get what you're saying. I'm excited to note that I've had several group meditations on the channel where we've seen the human resonance spike after we had done it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is becoming more sensitive to even smaller groups.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller group events are starting to affect it. So there's definitely something there. But uh, going back to the original question, parallel realities, I want to go back to that experience. On a larger scale, we're talking about different dimensions and changes in the earth, but on a smaller individual scale, I want to talk about your own personal experiences with moving through parallel realities. Have you experienced feeling like you woke up in a different reality than what you had before? The history was different, the objects are different.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about more of that fundamental aspect.
Right, right. So this is kind of how I have come to understand the scientific aspect of what is happening to our reality. We're moving further into the higher dimensions after 2012. And when you move further into the higher dimensions, um, right now we're kind of in a transition. We are in the early stages of the fifth dimension. And this is how we know that you are moving further into the fifth dimension. Okay. The third dimension, and the dimensions are basically just reality. It's your reality. Okay. And your reality, they found this in science, and we've known this in Buddhism and in the indigenous tribes. Your reality is a reflection of your consciousness, of what resides inside you. Okay. And the more spiritual work, and they've done this with meditation studies as well, and found this as well. The more spiritual work you do, the more inner work that you do, the more healing, if you have things to heal, old dense issues that are holding down your frequency, the more that you do that, uh, what happens is your reality will start changing to reflect your consciousness. And when your reality starts changing, your reality starts raising higher and higher to reflect your higher and higher frequency that is being emitted out of your aura field. Okay.
Mhm.
Remember that Buddhist mandalas, everybody has a halo around their, kind of like a bubble energy around their head, and a bigger one around their body. Okay. That's your Merkaba. And as you work on your spiritual work and you work on your inner work, you are increasing your frequency. And so that energy that you are just continues to get higher and higher in frequency. And the more you get higher in frequency, what happens is that you're going to match a reality that is of equal vibration. Okay. And so if you're of higher frequency, lower frequency people and events cannot exist in your reality. It's like oil and water. Okay. And so let me give you some examples of what being fifth dimensional awareness is. And this will maybe clarify some things that some people have, because everybody's like, we're still in the third dimension. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Post 2012 is choose your own reality. So if you think you're in the third dimension, then you can work with the third dimensional tools that you have to create in these higher dimensions. So it's going to be a little slower for you to kind of work into with your next best experience. If you think you're in the fourth dimension, then you can use those tools of linear time to kind of work from one to another to another to another. And in these higher dimensions, it's going to allow for that, because it's going to allow for you to create whatever expression you want. Um, so the third dimension is construction of forms. The fourth dimension is time exists in relation to each other, like the past affects the present affects the future. Okay, I just want to make that clear. Fifth dimensional awareness. And why I say awareness is because all the dimensions exist within your consciousness. Okay, they exist within your psyche. And we already know this in science that through brain research that our brains can access up to 11 dimensions in our brain. Okay, we can probably access more, but it's happening within your consciousness. So fifth dimensional awareness is that all time, past, present, future, dimensions up, parallel realities out, they all exist right now. Okay, it exists right now. And so fifth dimensional awareness is that um, consciousness, the universe, is expanding. Okay. And so if you work on your inner work, if you work on your spiritual um, nature, and you raise your frequency, what you can do is you can actually not only change your current circumstances, but you can also change your history, your past, as well as changing your future right here in the now moment. Because fifth dimensional awareness is that it all exists at the same time. And in any moment of now, you can change any of it. And that's what we're seeing in the Mandela effects, that you've done so much healing, inner work, spiritual work, you're raising your energy, you're raising your frequency so much, your energy field is raising so much that all of a sudden nuances in your reality, such as like the Berenstein, the Berenstain Bears, logos changing, histories in your family of events that you had firsthand experience of are slightly different than what you had experience of it. Changes in your history has changed, and these are evidence that you've done so much work on yourself that you've literally changed your past. And that's fifth dimensional awareness. And people are being fifth dimensional in these higher energies because it's bringing it all up,
Hmm.
and they're not aware that they're doing it. So it's
Right.
almost kind of like humanity has gotten a growth spurt, and we're stumbling all over ourselves, and we're going, all of a sudden I got this ability to like jump really high, or I got this ability to like throw really far. But they're like, how do I do that? How do I repeat that? How do I become more conscious and aware and control that? How do I learn not to use that to manipulate things and people? How do I become wise with this new ability that I have? We're getting these new abilities, and the Mandela effect, reality shifts, being aware of the multiverse and going between one reality to another because you're seeing those changes in your reality are evidence that you are shifting between realities, okay, or dimensions, whatever you want to call it, since it all exists at the same time. And this is a sixth sense.
Right.
Okay. All right. So people don't understand. They think six senses are, you know, being psychic, maybe remote viewing is sixth sense, telepathy, telekinesis. These normal ones that we were familiar with, we think those are six senses, but there's more six senses that we don't even have words for. Okay. And in Buddhism, typically when people are working on their spiritual work, and a lot of monks and nuns do this in the monasteries. They'll just sit there and just hone in and perfect their six senses. But we're doing this in mass, and some people are getting awakened to the nature of reality that is much more fluid than we think it is. And some people are raising their energy, or what you would call ascension, ascending up your energy field. And as a result of that, you're going to get your spiritual six senses are going to activate. If they haven't already activated, and they become dormant, they're going to reactivate or they're going to amplify. And
Right.
one of those six senses is reality shifts. There's another sixth sense that people are getting as well, and that is being simultaneously aware of their other parallel realities and communicating with other versions of themselves.
Hmm.
Or they'll be sitting there in their room and they'll just like, I just had a feeling that like somebody just walked back here and they went there and it was me. I just saw me walk down the hallway, but I'm standing here. I'm not sleeping. What's going on? It's like, oh, you're just aware of another version of yourself doing another thing. That's another sixth sense, is being
Right.
simultaneously aware of the different aspects of yourself. Here's the thing also. I feel like I'm really kind of going so far into the rabbit hole
No,
that I'm
keep
like
going.
losing people.
It's
So,
no, no, no. Keep going.
okay, your audience is
Oh,
ready for
they're ready for it.
they're already, so I don't have to. Sometimes when I do this anyways, I gotta start with baby steps
No, no.
and kind of build up and build up and build up. So I'm gonna assume that your audience is familiar with the Earth's resonance and her
Yeah.
field. I'm gonna assume that they're aware of the awakening ceremonies. I'm gonna assume that they're aware of consciousness, that we're all connected and we're creating our reality and experiences. So I'm gonna assume that they're familiar with what awakening is and ascension. So here's the next levels. And I haven't talked about this of any interviews yet because we kind of get stuck on the getting to the point,
Right, right.
getting to it, and then that kind of blows their mind. So here's the second part of it. The Buddha's prophecy, and it's just a prophecy, and I always thought this was just because they're just probabilities. Okay.
Right.
Okay. All prophecies are probabilities. They're not set in stone. Okay. And just knowing them, you can choose to work towards it or you can choose not to. So you can change the probable outcome as well. So the Buddhist prophecy and the many indigenous prophecies, like this, you know, the star people in Native American, in Buddhism, we call them the Tulku. And basically, they are ancient souls that incarnate, because you have to incarnate as a human being to be part of this experience, because Earth has a veil that of amnesia. So when you get born in here, you don't remember any of your previous experiences in creation before this life. And every single soul has had different experiences, but we are all leveled when we were born here. So we all coming in with a little amnesia. But anyways, there's a lot of Tulku children, or in Dolores kind of would call Indigo, Crystal, and all these other type of people. But they're basically, we wrap them up into one thing, and they're basically ancient souls that's had many, many experience and go around in creation, in samsara. And the new age term for it is what you would call starseed. Okay, they're Tulku children. Yeshua is a star seed. He had different experiences in different planets and universes prior to this lifetime. He came in way before the huge ban came through. So what's happening now is we're moving further into the higher energies of fifth dimension, and these ancient souls, these star people, these souls from the spirit world, they're all coming in to help with the awakening of humanity and the ascension of humanity to transition further into these higher dimensions. Okay. And when we get further into these higher dimensions and we see things a little bit differently and we start basically getting our crap together and stop making excuses for ourselves, we kind of get out of our pull-ups and we kind of grow up. Um, what we start doing is we start working with the energies more appropriately, and we start building the fifth dimensional reality because the energy is already here. Okay, we're just not familiar with how to use a new energy.
Right.
And this is what I've been saying in all my interviews. How do you use the new energies?
So my question, have you had a chance to read The Raw Material or The Law of One?
I
Mr.
have. I read it when it came out.
Oh, okay, good. Because that's
Well, a
it's
long time ago,
basically
yeah.
everything that you said in sort of different verbiage, but
Hmm.
um, we're moving. Their term for fifth dimension is fourth density, pertaining that we're moving into a density of light as we move to the higher level of consciousness. It's a higher density of light. Now, but while I want to talk about sacred geometry, something I haven't got a chance to talk as much about on my podcast. And I've read your book, and I want to talk about some different geometries to start with. I've discussed the Merkaba a lot, primarily through the lens of Drenvalo Melchizedek.
Hmm.
Hopefully you've had a chance to read that.
Oh, I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
Very masculine way of looking at the light body. I mean, there's more of a heartfelt, you don't need to know all the details and the particulars of where exactly the points of the Merkaba are and how it's moving. But there's
Yeah.
also sort of that masculine control that I want to know how my Merkaba is. I want to control it. Like the apex is a certain part above my head, and part of it's working through my pranic body and it's spinning. So a lot of
That's
people,
a very masculine way of seeing it.
it
Getting
is.
so
There's
caught
a
up in
part of me,
terms and techniques.
right? There's a part of me that wants to know the details, like the specifics, so I can have more control of it. So let's talk about that just from your perspective in your research. The Merkaba is mentioned everywhere. You see it in different religions, in different places. And so what have you seen that pertains to this? I've even seen it referenced as a personal spaceship that we can, once certain breathing techniques, it can take us directly to another dimension. It allows us to function and change the speed of light of the different electrons in our body. So
Hmm.
what have you had experience in manipulating your Merkaba? How does it work? And what did talk about your interpretation of Drenvala Melchizedek's more masculine explanation of the Merkaba?
Right. So I'm just going to give you just a very simple, we keep it very simple because we try not to get too caught up in techniques and forms and
Right,
labels and stuff, because then people will argue about labels and forms and techniques, and the ego will start coming out and trying to take
right,
over. And then they completely miss the point. This is what happens with a lot of traditions trying to talk about the same thing.
right.
So I proven in book 1 of Buddhist Mandalas, which when you read, and literally, when you read Buddhist Mandalas book 1, this one's all about sacred geometry in all of the major religions. It will rewire your consciousness to a fifth dimensional level.
Just by simply staring at the sacred geometry,
just by reading
becoming
and
aware of it?
understanding the content, by reading and understanding the content. So the in Hindu, the Sri Yantra symbol, which is a
Right.
natural symbol in nature, they've done semantics research in the sound frequency of the Sri Yantra, and it's the same exact image.
It shows
It's
the
a
same
natural,
image, yeah.
it's the
I have
same
a
image.
Syriantra, I have one tattooed on my back.
Yeah,
I have one in
it's
every room of my house.
yeah.
And I do
For
meditate a lot, just focusing on it. It's one of the most powerful, energy increasing meditation, just to focus on the Sri Yantra.
right, right.
Now,
So
my
the Sri
question to you,
Yantra, the Sri Yantra is 4.83 hertz, which is the frequency of a human being.
right,
Okay. Now the Sri Yantra is a two-dimensional way of seeing Metatron's cube. Okay. In Yin Yang, they saw it as the Yin Yang. In Zen, they saw it as a Yin Yang symbol, which is the flow of energy through your energy field. It's just the flow of energy through your energy field. If
right.
you look down from the top, it looks like a yin yang. That's how your energy field flows. So we're talking
Right.
about the
Okay.
same thing. In
So
Native
Metatron's
American,
cube, Sri Yantra, and
the yin yang symbol, same thing. In Native American, they would call it the whirling log for how it whirls. Okay,
right,
it's the same thing because all of the master teachers come in a whirling log. They come because you can see their mandala
right,
spinning and moving. In Zen Buddhism, they call it the Enzo, which is the big circle, the big
right,
circle. All the master teachers travel in a big circle that is visible. It's the same thing.
right,
It's your energy field. The swastika is a symbol in ancient Vedas that represent the way in which you move, the way in which your energy field moves. So
right,
all of these, even Ezekiel in the Bible,
right.
he talks about sacred geometry, that when
Yeah,
he
he
had
does.
his awakening and his enlightenment period, he saw all of these sacred geometry symbols. And they were, by studying these symbols, he
Right,
woke up to the greater reality. And the point is, and they call it Metatron's cube because he, they can associate that with him. But all of these sacred symbols, these sacred geometry symbols in all of these traditions throughout our known history are talking about the same thing. And I prove the science of how
right,
it is known and understood and depicted in ancient artwork in my book, Buddhist Mandalas. And what they're talking about is they're talking about your energy field, your Merkaba, your mandala, that big circle, the human aura field around you. It looks like an
right,
apple, like a vortex. And you also have one around your head.
right,
And everybody's energy field is going to be a little bit different. Some people are going to have a higher energy field. Some people are going to have a lower energy field. Your chakras are also the different colors and the different hertz in the chakras, the different um, musical notes in your chakras move within your energy field as well. So there's a whole medical science around um,
right.
health and healing with light and energy. So the basic point is all these religions are telling everybody the same exact thing. And it's basically you are energy. That's
But
what you
okay, I
are.
understand that, and we can all probably agree on that. But
Hmm.
can I gain access to greater power with these sacred geometries? Can it enable and raise my consciousness through what? Through staring at them, through reading about them? Is there something that I can do with this knowledge other than you and I just talking about, oh, that's a
Right,
pretty
right,
image, you know?
right, right. So the way in which you increase your energy field is working on your spiritual work.
Okay. So we don't
Okay. And
necessarily need to know about the sacred geometry. There's
it's
just
just
a
going to
part of
happen
us that
naturally.
wants to know that
Yeah.
that's
It's
what
the
we
ego that
really
wants
look
to know
like.
how to work it.
Right. It's
It's
what
the
we
ego.
really look like.
It's
So
what we,
us performing as a sacred geometry, as an individualized, there's also a greater sacred geometry. So there is a shared reality
mm-hmm.
that. So if I was to look at all of the realities from above, is it also a Metatron? Is it a more
It looks like
complicated?
the flower of life.
Okay, so all of the different Metatron's cubes. circling out as I expand upward would, if I
It just
look
looks like the
down,
flower of
it
life,
would look like the
bigger
flower of
and
life.
bigger and bigger. It's just a, your Merkabah looks like the flower of life, or
Right,
Metatron's cube. You go in and you look at Earth and all the different portal points that where she has high magnetics. It's the same exact air
right,
radius from one another. They also look at the flower of life. You go out into the solar system, and much of it is designed much like the chakras, and you'll
right,
see that it all follows the same geometric
right.
shapes and
So
formula, because
Melchizedek,
that's how Earth, that's how consciousness creates.
right.
You
So
create through these.
Melchizedek was saying the argument, Drimvala was that our geometry of our Earth became distorted before 2012. There was a point in time when it was not correctly shaped, and it did not fashion with the Fibonacci sequence that is closest to the one thought of the creator. So they went around. He tells a story of going around trying to recreate the geometry of the Earth, the grid, by creating another unity grid, utilizing the different pyramids and different key points, ley lines around the Earth to shift us from this other geometry, which was kind of focused on, it was a more egoistic uh, geometry, and shifting us to an entirely different geometry with our consciousness. And you were mentioning that. Have you heard of or read any more further about this changing of the Earth's geometry to a
Earth
different
is
geometry?
Earth is doing it herself.
Okay.
We don't need we.
Well,
Earth is doing it
he says
herself.
he awoke the
Sure.
actual chakras within Earth as a guided by his guides to awaken, because it used to come the crown chakra of the Earth used to be at a different part of the Earth, right? So they had changed the actual focal points of the grid by changing that to get it back to its normal process.
Right. I'm not really familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with what you're talking about because I watched some of his interviews, and that
Right,
could be the case for his experience.
right,
But there's other points in the Earth that's already activating on its own. You can go into
right. No, yeah, of course.
there's plenty of people who share online like weird pictures of a light beam just kind of shooting out of the ground, and they're like, "What's this?"
Right, right,
Or there's some weird random picture like behind like a Walmart or something, and there's another light beam shooting out of the ground.
right,
There's no pyramid there that's activating that light.
right.
It's just a different grid points of
Well, there's
where
definitely
Earth.
different more to it, but
Yeah.
the
So
hexagonal
she's
storm on Saturn, for instance, is that shifting storm the result of a Merkaba? We obviously see Merkabas creating different energies on different planets. Um, it's so clearly we see it with galaxies, but that's not. I want to talk to my dad, who's not going to even listen to anything I say about the Merkaba. I want to prove to him the validity of the Merkaba as our essential shape in light body. How do I tell a scientist that? I try to give examples of different places where you can see it. We can see it on Saturn, for instance. There's this hexagonal storm that would almost be impossible to form without a Merkaba. Do you have any other ways of explaining do you understand what I'm trying to ask? Oh,
right, right. So basically, it has to be experienced.
right,
It has to be experienced, and the for me, I don't really get too caught up in the techniques and the because it's going to happen naturally. It's like when you grow, you're just going to grow naturally. When
right,
you get a growth spurt, you're just going to get a growth spurt naturally, and you're just going to learn how to exist in your new reality. You're going to learn how to exist with your new abilities. And if you want to raise your energy field, because it's going to be much easier in these energies, going to just keep on coming in more and more. And so Earth just keeps on getting to the higher and higher
right,
dimensions because she keeps on pulling in more and more of the fifth dimensional energy. And it's going to happen. It could probably happen over many lifetimes. So
right.
don't, quit your
there's
day
some
job.
there's
But
some doomsaying out there when you read different channeled works and different people, even from different metaphysical, about the movement to the fifth dimension, about the fourth dimension, that there's 3 days of night, that all plastics will dissolve, that and a lot of them imply that slowly third density will die, that people on this planet we will literally enter into a whole other thing. So what is your comprehension of what life will be like as we transform collectively into this new dimension?
okay, so the only thing that's really changed is the energy of Earth. Okay, so
Right,
I'm gonna bring this back. So in these higher energies that came in further because the Schumann resonance have shown that she's taking leaps and jumps. And it's like the analogy of sailing. When you are, and this is like an analogy for life. When you're sailing in third dimension, you usually do it on your own. You got your own ego going, and et cetera, et cetera. And then the wind slightly changes. You don't notice that you do the same thing. And then a whoosh comes through. More higher energies come through. You don't notice it, you do the same thing. And then more whooshes, bigger energy comes in, bigger wind whooshes come in. And you're realizing, I need to do something different. I need to change the way that I'm sailing because the energy has completely changed my reality and my experience.
Mhm.
And so now I need to work in a fifth dimensional way and get some people to help me navigate the boat, navigate and sail it in a different way so we can take advantage of these whooshes and we can get to different destinations much faster, much smoother, because now we know how to use these higher energies. That's what's changed.
Right.
The earth is just changed. She's bringing in all these huge spikes of energy. She's bringing in more and more of these higher energies. And the indigenous people and Buddhists are saying, okay, it's choose your own reality, but if you want to take advantage of the tools available to you, you don't have to work so hard.
Right.
Okay. Law of attraction, manifestation,
Right.
all those really cute words and stuff, however you want to understand it. The energy is there to help you. You just need to know how to use it. So
Right.
when you're like, so for example, fifth dimensional awareness, if you're in the moment of now, fear doesn't exist in these higher dimensions. You have to transcend fear because if you don't transcend fear, you're going to manifest your worst nightmares. Because in these higher dimensions that are coming in further, it works very much like kind of like a river. It just brings up stuff from the ground.
Right.
Okay. And just sediments fall down and brings up like stuff that's been on the ground. It's the same thing in your life. It just has no choice or no opinion, right or wrong. It's just gonna, it's an amplifier. The
Well, it's
earth
going to
is a
be
mech.
hard for some people. They're going to
Oh
think about
yeah, it's gonna be really hard
spiders.
because they gotta deal with their
Yeah,
stuff.
they're going to think about spiders, and they're going to start seeing a lot of spiders.
That's
They're
why they
going to
don't belong in the fifth dimension.
Right, right. So some people just it'll be very quick, and some people with what we're, but it does feel more gradual. Now, one aspect I
And
wanted to
that's
ask
how
about.
it's being, and I want to clarify that as well with the magnetics of Earth because she's just an amplifier. She's gonna bring up what you are. So if you have dense issues that you haven't resolved, those can't exist in these higher dimensions. So you have to old issues, your
Eliminate them.
old, you have to work on them, transcend
Right.
them. There's a lot of modalities to help you with your mommy dad issues that keep coming up in your face. Your issues with relationships are going to, your money issues, all this stuff, your IRS tax evasion issues, all this stuff is going to come up in these higher energies to force you to deal with it because you can't, they don't exist in the higher energies. You have, there's opportunity for you to clear up that dense issue in your baggage that you're trying to carry to the fifth dimension, your 3D baggage, you can't carry with you. So it's going to bring it up. And for people who are aware of this, they're dealing with their inner demons. They're dealing with the dark night of the souls because as they get rid of those dense issues that's been holding down the frequencies, they're going to raise and lighten themselves up because you got to be lighter in these dimensions. You can't carry all this 3D baggage. So
Well,
for some people, it's going to be hell.
one of the things that is unique to all of these is the group mind concept. Part of this movement to the fifth mind is that um, as I had another interview with Jim McCarty, who was a part of the Law of One, and he said it's the Akashic is awakened.
Mhm.
We will start knowing the thoughts of everybody around us, even
Oh,
knowing their
that's another
incarnation.
sixth sense too. I've seen that with
Right,
my hypnosis clients too, because I do QHHT, which is the Dolores Cannon method of
right,
hypnosis, and I get clients coming in for the Mandela effects, for the reality shifts in their personal life, going, "How come my uncle's still alive?"
right.
I went to his fucking funeral. Sorry.
No, I get it. No,
But
but
I get those where they're like they'll fly across the state because they don't just want a hypnotist that is going to, they want somebody who can explain in a way that
right.
they can understand without getting too technical,
But when you see
all these
stuff
metaphysical
happening,
stuff that's happening. Well, what's happening is the type of clients I'm getting is I'm getting a lot of starseeds who have been dealing with their issues with the wheel of dharma.
Right.
They have been dealing with their human dramas and they haven't really resolved it. It's kind of blowing up in their face in these higher energies, and they've tried to ignore it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and coming back for them to resolve. And so they're resolving it because they're forced to for the first time. So they're finally resolving these issues. And then all of a sudden, an aspect of their family that they remember happened one way is completely different. There's a completely different family history now. I've
Right.
had clients who like, my girlfriend now has 3 kids. I remember her having 5 kids. I know their names and what they look like. Where are these
Right.
kids?
Wow.
Okay, so you're getting some of that. I'm getting clients who are coming in with different sixth senses that they, as they work on their inner work, and they're like, I'm spiritual, I'm working on it, but I got to deal with this stuff, and it's coming up, and I'm like, you got to work on it. So when we do the hypnosis, we go over the things that they have issue with in this life. We go over the issues in their relationships that might be holding them down. And some people in this space are like, oh, I'm love and light, spirituality, inner work, and they don't want to talk about their dad.
Well,
And
also
that's the linchpin that's been holding them down.
there's a
So,
connection that's happening as we move into this, that where when I see an injustice done for someone else, that I feel it for myself. I'm
that's fifth
connecting to
dimensional
other
awareness.
selves as self.
hmm
So if I
That
see in the past, oh, I just watching TV, it's not me. But now when I see that, it affects me personally more and more. And that's why
yep.
you see people overreacting, and maybe they're not overreacting.
No,
Things
no,
happening in the world because it's a
everything is
personal
happening
thing.
in unity consciousness. Fifth
Right.
dimensional energy is all about it's our pathway into these other dimensions. It's our pathway into a higher consciousness that puts us into the pathway of being interstellar
Right.
with other beings that are already at this level. So we can't see them, we can't communicate with them because we have been at a lower level. And so, just like oil and water, they can't see us and we can't see them, we can't communicate. But when we raise our energies up to these higher energies, and the earth is helping because she's already doing this and raising everybody up, we're going to get to a point where it's no longer oil and water. We are at the same frequency. And now we can see that there's more to reality and there's other beings in our reality. So in fifth dimensional awareness, you're going to look at somebody's eyes and you're going to immediately feel their pain. You're going to see like you see you're the one that's getting beat down. You're going to feel it in your body, in your psyche, because um, everything is connected. You're not separated anymore in these higher energies. And the more that these higher energies come in, everyone is going to be feeling. So you can't let things go without fixing it, because you can't just turn away and move on. You have to deal with it because it's going to get worse. And so it's making us address things that we've put aside. And so when somebody has like when there's a riot going on, I call it collective rioting, but if there's like the ML, the Black Lives Matter,
Hmm.
for example, I'll give you an example. So Black Lives Matter, that has been going on throughout history. How many times have we seen this? Nobody ever learns throughout history. But what's different is the reaction is happening on a collective level.
Right.
You're not just seeing it in that specific city or state, you're seeing it all across the country on a collective level, and you're seeing it across the world on
Right.
a collective level. Those are signs of being fifth dimensional awareness. We are going through a growth spurt and we're not even realizing that we've done this. But
Wow.
these are the signs that we're fifth dimensional awareness of unity, is that we are um, doing things on a collective level,
But it
you
does feel
know.
like there is not, just like the yin and yang, there is an oppositional force working a bit against that collectivity. And it's
There
also
has to be a
working as a,
contrast a little bit, because
right. But
that's
you have
what,
so many people that are in their own realities that are so divided in their social bubbles, that makes for this particular energy almost scary on some level,
well, it can be kind of scary. I understand. It's
because
a growth spurt.
we have
Um,
social media distorting this. If we
mhm.
understand truly how the law of attraction works, we have a,
Yeah.
close to 50% of our population believing disinformation and
Oh, you mean in the United
manipulation,
States? In the United States?
especially in the
Yeah.
United States.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially, yeah. I understand. Yeah.
Where
The
people
thing
are
is,
believing, they'll say the sun is blue, and I'll say, but no, it's not. Look outside, and they'll say, no, it's not. It's blue, and that's their reality now. They've filtered it so much that, with these new energies coming in, it's easy to accept a new reality. You start to see it, proof of your reality right away. But these distortions could be collectively a problem as we move to the fifth dimension.
yeah. So, there are parallel versions of people in
Right.
different realities. And I know for myself, my personal experience, and for the clients that I have who are like the one I said, how come my uncle is still alive? I went to his funeral. There are
Right.
parallel versions of people, and it's very gradual and very smooth the way reality shifts on us. And then you don't notice that because, like I said, in those higher frequencies, those higher hertzes of reality, the picture quality is much faster. The frames change so fast that you can't really tell that you've
Yeah.
shifted from one experience to another experience to another frame to another frame until all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, you had 5 kids and not 3.
Right.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Nelson Mandela did not die in prison.
Right. But still,
You
it
know,
feels
you get
like
those nuances, and that's when you
people are
know.
right. But it feels like people who have awareness of this happening are using it against us. They're using our own creative powers against us. We start creating our own fears. It's a way of limiting and controlling us. I know that's a fear-based thought, but I see it now that I know that I create my reality. I see media groups and corporations that know that I create my reality too, and I'm creating the reality they want for me. They're using it against me. They're using this
That's
energy.
one way for you to see that, if you can see that, but the meditation research has already proven that the people who, when they're in high meditative states, their brain reaches gamma brainwave frequency.
Right,
And gamma brainwave is like 120 to 160 hertz. It's the higher picture quality. These are the dream makers.
right,
Everybody else, and they've done this research, over 60 years of this research on meditation. And when they do it, just kind of like you said earlier, when you were doing the meditation, the group meditation, and they can tell the difference, the people around them are much calmer. They're not there's less violence in that city for some reason when they do this meditation research
right,
as a group, when they get into these higher gamma brain waves. And so the the people who are that you're talking about are not in gamma. And they're
right,
and it does make a difference because the people who are and you're not going to see them, they're going to be they're the normal grandma next door who's gardening. They're
right,
the really kind of almost hermit guy that's just sitting there petting his dogs in his backyard, and he's just kind of minding his business. It's not really getting
right.
just normal people, normal people. These are the people who are naturally radiating gamma wave frequencies all the time, and they're the picture makers. Everybody else is trying to clean up their stuff
Right.
because they're doing the work to get to the picture that these people are
It's what
naturally emitting.
Vadim Zeland calls it the reality projectors. There is a certain small number of people that are projecting reality, and we're kind of swimming through that. So
Yeah.
I haven't
So I
decided if
wouldn't
that's
get
true
caught
or
up with
not.
the storm. I wouldn't get caught up with the storm because then you're going to lose the vision.
Right. Well, I hope
Okay.
not. I hope I don't lose the vision, but
Yeah, yeah. Stay in the higher elements, because as this gets, it's going to be a bumpy ride, and like humanity, it always has to be a little bit bumpy.
right.
But as we get further into this, fear is resistance.
It really is.
Okay. Fear is resistance, and people are going to have to transcend their fears and find different ways. There's lots of modalities, um, and even more now, um, of ways to address fear, address the fear of being too successful, address the fear of, how is it going to work?
Right.
Whatever. A lot of people still have fear of demons and hell, and I actually wrote that in book one. Actually, not book one. In Buddhist Mandalas, there's one that addresses that fear. when
Right.
you read when you read that, you're like, that is the most ridiculous fear I've ever had. I can't believe I spent my whole life fearing that. Now that I think about it,
But in fifth dimension, these entities might be created from our fears. They might be created in bodily form where you can see them as three-dimensional entities
yeah, for
at a
you
certain
to
point.
not they don't exist in the higher dimensions. It's like oil and water. But as you are learning to get up into those higher energies and learning to create with these higher energies, all of your issues will come up for you to address so that you learn how to consciously create,
Right.
not with fear in it.
Well, I want to
Okay?
thank you so much. This has been a wonderful interview.
Yeah, there's a lot more on the
Oh,
fifth dimensional awareness. Oh yeah, there's a lot
there's a
more.
lot more. We'll have to come back again and we can talk some more. Please let me know when your next book comes out.
Mhm.
And if hopefully soon I'll be reading one of the chapters from your book. So I might share the sacred geometry chapter after talking with you. I think everybody can get that perspective because you have some good references and bibliography there that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to check out your books, check out Von Galt's channel. I'll put a link in the description. And welcome again to the Reality Revolution, Von.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm just really excited today because this is the first day that my book is released. This is it, the Reality Revolution. Worked on this for a very long time. So many of the things that I discovered along the way, and I was excited to share it with everybody. Tell you a little bit about it. I'm like everybody else. I'm interacting in the world and starting to realize that my thoughts created reality. As I did this, I started to see some major shifts in my reality. I started to explore the idea of maneuvering through parallel realities. I'm your host, Brian Scott.